go.
I'm Jane, I'm 29 and I'm in Extinction Rebellion, and I think it was through there that I got invited to come and speak here, but I'm not particularly going to speak about climate, so I'm just sort of speaking about what came to mind really. Okay, so I'm going to start with looking at children. So children children are born with a strong sense of justice, and there are experiments that have shown this to be true. There's one experiment where you have babies and you show them a scene where one character is cruel to another character, and then afterwards you give them the option of playing with those characters, and generally they'll choose not to play with the one that's being cruel. And there's another experiment I was reading about where you have a pair of children and one child is offered 4 sweets and the other child is offered 1 sweet, and the child that's offered 4 sweets, they can choose to either accept that arrangement and keep the sweets, or for both children to get none. And generally that child with 4 sweets will choose for both children to get none, because they'd rather have nothing and it to be fair than to have something unfairly. And then a completely different example is the youth strikes that have just been happening, and where we've seen over 1,000 children protesting in Cambridge and apparently over 50,000 in London, which is the biggest protest I've ever seen. So obviously they really care. But the society that we live in doesn't reflect this. There's a lot of social injustice, there's homelessness, there's poverty, and in particular there's child poverty, which doesn't fit at all with what children seem to want. And not just in terms of people, but also in terms of the planet. There's climate breakdown, there's animals going extinct, there's pollution. All of these things don't fit with what children seem to be born wanting. So I'm asking why this society that we live in doesn't reflect the wishes of the children. So one possibility is that the children are wrong to have these wishes, to have this sense of justice, and children are wrong to dream of these things. And I'm going to say straight away that that's not true, because the adults actively encourage children to have these dreams and to behave in this way. Adults encourage children to play fairly, to act fairly, they encourage them to think about other people, and especially to think about other adults. So obviously even the adults themselves think that the children should be behaving in this way. So that can't be the case. So I'm going to assume from now on that that children are right to have this sense of justice, and that this is what they want out of the world, and this is what they should get out of the world. So another option is that all adults have let down their younger selves because they haven't devoted their lives to these dreams, and they haven't made the sacrifices that are in line with their principles. So that's one possibility. But another option is actually that they can't make these sacrifices, and that the system that we live in has limited people from making these decisions that they want to make, and stopped them from being able to live the way that they want to live. And it's probably a combination of the two. So to try and decide which was the bigger reason, I asked some of my friends what their dreams were as children, and whether they managed to achieve them or not. And so these are the answers that they got, that they gave me, which I've paraphrased. The first one said, I wanted to be a teacher, but I couldn't get my head around studying A-levels, and so I never got the grades that I needed. The second one said, I wanted to work in the film industry, and I got good grades, good enough to get in, but I couldn't get a job, and I still don't have a job because I didn't have any experience. And the third one said that she went to university, she got a first, and she wanted to go on to do a PhD, but she couldn't because she couldn't afford the fees, because she needed to support her mother at the same time. And so she still hasn't managed to do that, even though she's trying to save. And so it seems that the dreams that my friends had when they were young, they've not been able to achieve them because of a problem with the education and the training that they're given. And they've basically been born into a system that hasn't provided them with the opportunity to carry on with what they wanted to do. And they've ended up in a situation which a lot of people end up in, where they need to earn money to live, and so they end up in a job that they're probably working in full time, and then they just don't have the time or the money to then go on to do something different. And this system that's holding back the young people has come about through the actions of adults specifically. And some of that's through design. For example, the education system has been designed by adults. Some adults have decided that children will sit GCSEs, they'll sit A-levels, they'll learn in this particular way, they'll have exams, they'll have a national curriculum and all of these things. And part of the system has just come about indirectly, sort of over time, and evolved in a particular way. The bits that are by design, I don't think that there's any excuse for. I think designing an education system where certain children that don't have the right opportunities can't get by and get the grades that they need, there's no excuse for that. It's a bad system, and those adults have let down those children. The bits where it's come about indirectly is harder to work out what should have happened. But I think that even in that situation, there's the option to change it, because we've seen from history that things like the civil rights movement has achieved a huge change in rights for different people. Women now have the vote. We have a welfare state, which at one point was absolutely not there at all, and we have an NHS. So obviously it's possible to have these changes. And the fact that we haven't had these changes that we need in the system means that we've let down the young people, we've let down the children. But even if adults fight, or the adults that are in particular positions of power manage to achieve these changes, we're going to still end up with a system where these adults are making decisions on behalf of children. And there's something that adults often say to children, which is, you've got your whole life ahead of you. And I think that's a really dangerous thing to say, because you're telling the child that their life starts when they become an adult, and that their life isn't happening now. And you're making this separation between children and adults, and you're saying that as children, you're just waiting to become an adult and then to live your life properly. And another thing that I find interesting is there's no upper limit on who can vote. Working people can vote on issues to do with work, older people can vote on their pensions, homeowners can vote on housing policy, and children can't vote on anything. And I do think that adults are letting down young people by not fighting for a change, but I also think that they're letting down young people by not involving them in that change. And we should all be fighting for a world that is fit for our children, but the people who know what that world should be like are the children themselves. They're still young, they're still idealistic, they still have that sense of social justice that hasn't been influenced by the society that's around them. And I think until they're part of the decision-making process, we'll always be letting them down.
Thank you.